Woohoo, back to fun stuff. Still requires caffeine, but fun stuff. I was up late with the crashing markets last night. It was quite quite a self-discovery. Sitting through those falling squiggly lines, but it's all good now. Everything kind of seems to have hopefully found a bottom, and what's nice is it kind of like once the markets do what they do there, like I'm kind of, there's not much trading to do until things kind of pick a direction. So it gave me the day to really focus on coding the newly dubbed Athletaverse project. Oh, I'm all 6s and 7s now as soon as I go on camera. But so we started this a couple of streams ago, and really what ended up happening was I just wrote out the basic non-fungible token, like minimal contract, and I didn't really have like much of a game plan, so it was kind of like one of those dying on camera streams where like for me, I have a bit of a challenge like doing the creative side of things. So like while I'm on camera, for whatever reason, there's some sort of stage fright there or something. So what I found was helpful was over the last couple of weeks just kind of putting the code aside and thinking about the project that I'm trying to build, doing some actual planning, which I mean I still don't go that deep like in terms of planning a new project, because I just don't really know what I'm doing to that extent yet. Like if I spend too much time documenting everything out and like building this massive plan, there's a good chance that I'm gonna get a few days into it and things just aren't gonna go the way that I expect them to, and that's just part of the problem when you're working with a technology that's still pretty new to you. So let me just get kind of it's a basic flow chart, and hopefully it means as much to you as it does to me. But I'm just getting that for you right now so that I can kind of go over the project at a high level first and explain what I'm actually trying to build here. Okay, so let's do that. So what started as like an idea to just build like a hockey game, which I still definitely want to do, I kind of realized like there's not a huge market for hockey. I mean, I play the EA Sports game quite often, and one of the big complaints about that game is the length of time, I guess, between like major development cycles, like big time features and game engines and things that people expect to see with new releases don't seem to make it into the NHL game at all, or as quickly as they make them, like as they make it into like the FIFA and like the football and baseball games, which are, to be fair, reaching a massive audience in comparison to the NHL games. So when I started thinking about this project, like hockey's my game. I love it. It's the number one to me, but I want this to be something that has like that potentially has a future, and if people see it and like it and want to use it, they can use it too. And I just feel like limiting it to a hockey audience is kind of, it doesn't really make that much sense, right? And I mean, one thing that I always come back to in my mind, like Roham said from the Flow team, like the CEO at Dapper Labs, he said that like when you're approaching a new project, think about it at the protocol level, and I thought that was a great idea. So I started abstracting away the things that made like a hockey game specific to hockey, and tried to come up with like a basic smart contract, like a protocol that will allow you to build a sports game of any type on top of it. So this would be essentially like a team sports platform. And I guess this is a good segue to the actual diagram. So this up here is just the main contract, and this flowchart, like I apologize in advance, I don't do a lot of project planning, and somebody that does actually do this for a living is probably going to be laughing at me right now. But this makes sense to me, so I'll walk you through it. The main contract is kind of responsible for keeping track of like the overall global state of this, what I'm calling the Athletaverse. Um, so it is basically kind of the mothership contract that tracks everything. But what I'm trying to do is split these things into like resources that are stored outside of the contract, because one of the big things with Flow that's different from Ethereum is the contract defines things and stores the code, and can, like, that contract account can store things that are relevant to that contract. But like, if you're creating tokens or resources, things that move around from user to user, those actually get stored in the user's account storage on Flow, where in Ethereum they're stored in the smart contract, and there's just a pointer that says which account is the owner. So one of the things that I'm thinking about right off the bat is storage, and who has to pay for that, because there is like a state rent that you have to pay for with the Flow blockchain. So it doesn't make sense to bloat the main smart contract account, because, you know, if I deploy this contract, I sure as heck don't want to be paying an arm and a leg for everybody to stuff it full of data. But that being said, I also don't want my users to be, you know, paying a premium to use my product. So I think there's a happy medium somewhere, and it causes you to kind of think differently about what gets stored where. So these leagues that, like, a league manager or the admin, like the contract admin, would be able to create, would actually get stored in the account of whoever creates the league. So there would be a reference in this contract to who owns that league, and where you can find that that capability, like where you can find the ability to actually access the league. But it wouldn't get stored in the contract itself. It would just be there would just be a dictionary in there with the league ID and the owner. And then this would get stored in whoever creates its account. So we'd have a league, and then this league would contain like its own kind of dictionary of team IDs with, say, a capability to access that team and use it, or make it do something in that league. So just going back up top here, so our league manager or admin would create leagues, and these, remember, these leagues can be any sport now. It's not just a hockey league or anything like that, but they'd be able to create these leagues, and then a user would be able to come in, create a team, and then once they have a team, they could register to a league. Once they're in a league, then we get into the fun stuff, and we actually have the season cycle. So we would have a draft, we would have a season, we'd have playoffs. Playoffs would lead to a championship, which would mean a reward would change hands, and the cycle would continue. So kind of as a phase 2 thing here, like, the user would create their team, and then I've kind of, like, anything that's orange is something that I'm considering like a phase 2. And I mean, phase 2 would have to happen pretty quickly, because this stuff's all very important to me. But this manage team component, like, I think phase 1 you'd be able to manage your team, obviously, to some extent. But something I'm trying to build into is the athletes have kind of an age limit, like where they actually retire and they're no longer able to play. So I mean, I have to figure out how that would work, and still kind of vet that with potential users and others, because that's something that I think it's a really cool concept, but I don't know what kind of impact that would have on the ecosystem. But I think what's cool about that is it opens up the opportunity to do different things with those athletes once they retire. So the athlete age would increase, the athlete would retire. We could involve some sort of like NFT staking thing, and some sort of land-based thing, kind of revolving around like arenas or stadiums, where once your athlete retires, you could actually put it into, like, say, send it to your arena, to your player development program, which is essentially just a staking pool, where then, based on the quality of athletes that you have in that program, they would then mint like new athletes with stats that are kind of better or worse depending on the quality of the NFTs you have staking. And then I also thought like it would be cool to be able to mint like special gear or something like that, or like rare gear once you have like a certain tier of players in there. So like say you have some legendary players that you can't play with anymore, but just like in real sports where you have somebody who's an icon and there's like a line of gear equipment that goes out that's you know that they sponsored that athlete with or something like that. I think it would just be cool to kind of add that as an NFT item as well, which would then be made available through the shop. And now we're getting into some, you know, wild. I don't know how I'm going to really approach that stuff yet, but I also thought it would be cool to maybe connect the shop. So like every arena has like an equipment store or something like that. So just some interesting ways to move currency around and reward different actors in the ecosystem that all essentially play like a different role. So then back up here, like this Genesis athlete mentor thing is like in my mind that would just be something for the first kind of run where we have like an admin only way of minting new athletes, and that's just a way of making sure that we have some athletes to begin with to start this whole cycle off. Yeah, so I mean like it's again like this is it's not something where I've really gone crazy for 8 hours a day and tried to plan out every little detail and nuance of the system, because you know as I go through the smart contracts there are going to be things that may or may not actually kind of work as I may have thought they did. So there's a whole bunch of new stuff and quite a few things that I'm not even sure is possible that I need to take on here. So I mean one of the big things that like we're definitely not going to get to yet, but as soon as I really create the player, like the athlete, one of the goals here is, so like there's two big things that I'd like to do with this, and they're really exciting but super intimidating. So like the first one would be the gear side of things. Like I don't want to require, like I don't want the athlete NFT to be the only NFT that can play on a team. I want you to be able to bring in anything, right? Like I want you to be able to bring in your well, I don't, not anything, but I want you to be able to bring in like your genie's avatar or like any player type of NFT that could replace an athlete on a team. So the first challenge right off the bat there is like every NFT is going to have its own kind of structure and metadata, and unless it was intended to play sports, it's probably not going to have stats for you know skills and how it should stack up against other NFTs. So my thought right off the bat was like, why don't we abstract, like why don't we make the athlete kind of born without skills and make the first equipment bag they open generate those stats, and then everything after that, like that would be like a set of base stats, and then every athlete that purchased an equipment bag would essentially be able to play ideally any sport in this Athletaverse, because they would have the basic stat set that they need in order to go jump into any game. So how to do that, I don't know. Like we're talking about that every week, because that is it's a big time extensibility feature, and that's something we can't really do yet. So I mean that's where I'm kind of stoked to actually be working on this now, because this will be a real world example that I get to take to the flow team and say, hey, like this is what we're trying to do. Like I want this to happen. I have no idea how to make it happen. This is the ideal outcome. How do we do it? So that's number one. If I can find a way to make it so that you know you can bring in external like third-party NFTs like you know CryptoKitty or whatever to actually put it on your team and play, awesome. That would be a huge win, because that would be like what I want this to be is as many steps towards the proper metaverse as possible. So on that note, with the arena, like my first thought was I want to do something with land, because I think that's just a sweet idea. I love the concept of digital land ownership. I live in a place where land's really expensive in the real world, so my hopes of buying property today are pretty slim. but the ability to actually buy land that I hope will appreciate over time in games, and especially in like metaverse type things where like I'm able to walk into this world where once I eventually get myself a VR headset, I'll actually be able to experience this whole new environment, this whole new world. Um, and like I just think that's so cool, right? Like I've mentioned it before. It's the timing for that really couldn't be better in a like when we're all confined kind of to our own little boxes. It would be super awesome to have this virtual world to jump into and be able to hang out like normal again, or even better than normal, and play video games at the same time. So right off the bat, I wanted to get into like land NFTs, and I just thought like one of the problems I'm seeing with the metaverse idea is like there should be one metaverse, and all these game ecosystems and environments should be accessible through that. So do we really need like another map with tiles for sale that kind of is walled off from all these other worlds? Or is there maybe an opportunity to create like a new type of land token, or even just like a building that you can then take to one of those worlds and deploy on your land? So I mean, the idea there would be like ideally I'd be able to jump into Decentraland or Crypto Voxels or wherever, and there would be kind of like this arena construct that the owner could customize, and kind of paint. But it would be a place where there would be some monetary value, like there'd be a few ways to earn by just owning an arena, and then there would be like incentive to make your arena the hottest arena in town. So like make your arena the place that people want to view games and play games the most, which should in turn increase your revenues for owning that building. So I think that would be pretty fun. Again, it just kind of like I have this vision in my head of one day kind of walking out onto the ice of my own hockey rink that I've built in this game and just having it be like the most amazing place I could ever imagine, because that's kind of a dream come true for me. So I mean, that's in a like kind of the gist of the high level idea that I'm trying to kind of hack out right now. And so I mean, if anybody does watch this that's building something similar, or that wants to collaborate, or you know just has some general ideas on what I just mentioned, please do reach out. Leave a comment. I need your help because this is going to be quite a beast. But anyway, let's get into it. What I've coded so far. So this is kind of this is what I did earlier today, and it's really just a quick kind of go at things. Like it's just roughed into place. I just have some of the basic stuff here, but at least it's a start, and at least it's something like I mentioned on Twitter earlier. It's so nice to kind of take a week or two and organize your thoughts and plan things out a little bit before you jump into the code, so you don't end up with something that looks like this, which is just ugh. But this is nice. Like I was able to kind of run through it. I had more answers than questions as I was coding the entire time. There's lots of to-dos, like so there's some housekeeping stuff, like I just want to explain things a little better via commenting. But as we get down into the contract here, like what's nice is being able to actually explain things before you write it. That lets you know that you've actually planned things a little bit. So just to get started, this is our high level contract. So total leagues is just going to be a uint 64. This is just going to keep a count of every league that's been created. Thanks, Bastion. This is for you, buddy. Yeah, I don't know if you saw me flick over to this one, but let's just not talk about that one. This is the one that I actually had a chance to think about. So, so I haven't updated my version of the Flow CLI. So there is support for enums now. I personally, I don't even know how to use them or if I'm actually going to be using them properly there, but I'm going to update my Flow CLI and then bring that in and consider that as a way to track the different sports that are going to be available. And I still need to rethink like whether I want to actually have those kind of limited at this stage, or like if that's actually going to be good for the project. because there might be a more creative way to kind of bring that option in later, or kind of like a la carte. But the reason I'm thinking about it is like when it comes to equipment type, when we're generating equipment type, it has to be like you don't need a hockey stick if you're playing rugby, right? Like, so like the equipment is going to be somewhat specific to the port or to the sport, and I don't want it to be just like a cookie cutter equipment set where you kind of lose out on that. Like, there's some really great kind of like nostalgic, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but there's like it's like this, you kind of lose out on like the appeal of the sport itself if you kind of start generalizing things like that. So I have to see what I'm going to do with the whole sports thing there. But anyway, commissioners is just going to be a dictionary that tracks the league ID and maps it to an address of the owner. So one thing I noticed that keeps coming up is questions about trying to find where data is stored on the blockchain. So as mentioned before, because things aren't centralized to the smart contract, the leagues that I create are actually going to live in the creator's account storage. So I just figured that's a pretty easy way to map out which league lives where, and that way we can use that address to go find the league and get the data from it if we need to. So then next we're just creating a resource, which is a league. So this is actually going to move, like this will be something that we create and store in a user's contract. So we've created it as a resource. Each league will have an ID, and it'll have this dictionary of teams. So right now I'm just creating it with UN64, so that's our team's ID number, and then the capability that may or may not exist here. I don't know if I'm actually going to use that, like if I'm going to use a capability there or not. I don't really know how I'm going to use these teams yet, so I'm just going to stick that in there like that for now. I also think I'm probably going to define a capability type. Sweet spelling there. Yeah, I'm also going to define like a capability type there to just kind of restrict that. It makes it a little easier to use in the code if I remember correctly too. And then so when we initialize it, we're just going to pass in the ID. It's all done down here. And then we're going to just initialize it with an empty teams dictionary. So each league will just start with basically an empty state. These are just some basic methods. So to register a team, we'll just pass in the team's ID and the capability. For now, I might change this up where you pass in the team itself and it just reads the data off the team. Again, just roughing things in for now. Remove team, pretty simple. We just remove the data from the dictionary, capability in that case, and then just a getter for the team IDs. And then we have the create new league. So this is just right now it's just going to be kind of a method that anyone could call to create a new league, but you can see I'm kind of thinking about like making this admin only, so that maybe somebody would either need to like purchase or at least commit like an initial prize vault when they're creating in a league. To just, what I'm trying to avoid is having a million leagues that do nothing. I want people to create a league with the purpose of actually using it. So I mean, that was today's kind of thing. I'll go through this again too, just not to leave you hanging, but this is just a simple method that creates and returns the new league to the caller. So gets the league ID from our total leagues. So it'll start at 0. This is our value on the contract itself. And then once it gets that, we increment the total leagues value on the contract, and then create a new league, passing in the league ID that we got up there. And then yeah, down here, the contract just initializes as empty. But that's just kind of like the basic starting point for this. So there's still a lot to go, obviously, and I'm still trying to think about like the structure for like, okay, where do I want to stick, like even in terms of like my contracts. Should I be building my teams in this contract, or should I create a new contract to build my teams? So now taking you over into the ugly side, and this is kind of where things get weird. So last stream, when I started this project, I really was just kind of going freestyle. I had no idea like what I was trying to build. Like I had, you know, the basic plan in my head, but I hadn't really taken the time to think about it. And just to show you what that looks like, Bastion, cover your eyes if you're watching still. I kind of just started throwing things down because I didn't really think before I code. I just, you know, I was hammering things in and reading from another contract and not really thinking the way I'm going. So this is all still like actually pretty good, and I don't know if it's all going to be used, because I think for this type of project, especially when you don't really know what you're doing, like you probably shouldn't start from the top or from the bottom up. So I think for me, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to just start from the top down and kind of just refactor things as I go. Just seems like a smarter way to build. But anyway, so in here, like we're doing a lot. Like what I was trying to play with when I was building the sports equipment contract was you know, bringing in what type of equipment is it, or what, like at least what sport is it, the rarity factor. So like how am I going to control that? What stat does this piece of equipment belong to, and what multiplier? So I guess the idea I have in mind is like the athlete would have like that base set of stats, and then based on the quality of gear that they're wearing, there would be a multiplier that would increase. I don't think we'd debuff stats, but I think we'd increase those to a certain point. So this is really just stream of consciousness in code, and I feel bad even showing this to you. And this is something that's going to get refactored, and probably just like I'm going to probably end up doing the equipment stuff last, just because I don't really know what I want to do with that yet. So anyway, that's, you know, nothing too mind-blowing, but that's where I'm at now. The repo, it's still named Hockeyverse. I'm going to change it to the Athletaverse, but it is hosted on my GitHub. I'll pop that into the comments so that you can actually poke through the code. I'll do that in a bit, but I'll make sure that's up there before the stream's over. But I think that's probably about as exciting as it's gonna get. I'm gonna jump back into it for a little bit, and I have a problem coding and talking at the same time, so I'll be hacking away at it quietly. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna post this stream on YouTube after it's done, or if I'm just gonna kind of clip it and start doing highlights videos, because I think that's probably a better way to post content. I don't know if anybody wants to sit through a 2-hour stream. But yeah, I'm gonna hang out for a little bit and keep coding, and then if anybody has questions or suggestions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, just hang out, watch me live code, and listen to some stream beats. Funny, as soon as I'm on camera, my productivity goes way down, which is fine. I'm not complaining. It's nice to be back on stream. Feeling pretty bad for not being online as much as I was before, so trying to prioritize it. We're almost at 1 a week again, so we're going in the right direction. Just trying to think what I'm trying to do here. So I feel like the next step is probably going to be to build the teams. So I do want to get it to a point where I'm able to actually deploy and test and just make sure things are working the way I want them to. The next thing I should really be doing too is upgrading my Flow CLI, but I'm not going to do that on stream because last time I tried it failed horribly, and it's one of those things that I just need to be thorough with and make sure I'm actually reading things properly. So I'll do that later tonight or over the weekend or something like that. It would be nice to kind of test enums out and think about how I want to or if I want to manage the sports that way, at least what's available, because that's that's one of the things on my mind is like, is there really a limit to what type of sports that we can actually use this with? Like, because if you want to build a boxing match or a boxing game or something like that, or a tennis game, that's fine. Like if you have 1 or 2 person teams, this is really just kind of handling more of the transaction data and managing players and assets within the game itself. So we should probably be able to create any type of game. It really just comes down to the equipment. So we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's go look at the Top Shot contracts for a sec. This has been awesome, having these contracts open source as a go-to. I appreciate it so much. So what I'm looking at here is like Dapper's kind of split these up, so they're not writing everything in a single contract. You don't need to, you can import them. So I'm just kind of looking through to see how they split things up and why, and then think about my project and how to do it, because there are going to be quite a few resources and potentially contracts to play with, because there's going to be a bunch of resources, a bunch of different structs, I'm assuming, to handle different metadata. Because I am gonna, I do plan on storing things kind of, I'm playing around with it a little bit in this sense, because I don't necessarily want to store all of the historical data for every player, team, and season in the league. It would be probably better to see if I can store that down in the actual player asset, and then maybe infer that some way at the higher levels to display that data. So I'm thinking, after a season's over, if you're looking at the standings, maybe there's a better way to handle that data, because it just comes back to storage, how bloated are things gonna get, who should pay for what, and again, it's just a good opportunity to kind of play around and see what effect things have. So this is all specific to there's a fair amount here. So they've broken out the sharded collection, the marketplace, which is totally understandable. Can't remember if they're still using this. But yeah, this makes sense because it's a different type of collection, so it's kind of something that can be imported and used. Admin receiver. Cool. So this is something that I was thinking about for the league management. This would be something similar that we could kind of use for creating, managing who actually has the ability to create a new league. Methinks. But yeah, okay, that actually helps out quite a bit. So I'm probably going to stick with just putting my team logic in here with everything else. Your comments are so good that it makes me second guess everything I'm doing. I want to be way more explicit. He's blocking things out a little bit. So I haven't built like interfaces or anything yet, which is definitely something I'm going to need to do as we get deeper in, but that's just more or less because I still haven't really like figured out what the exact functionality, who should access what. It's usually like, that's something that I seem to kind of do after the fact. Like I'll build the logic out and then kind of comb through it and think about how to restrict it. But I find with this, it is good to kind of keep it in mind the whole time you're building. So you don't want to, I mean, like with flow, it's really nice because you really, it's hard to shoot yourself in the foot, and like leave big security flaws for your users or anything like that. But it's still something where, you know, if you can avoid having to rewrite an entire method or declaration for a resource because you because you need to do everything different, it's definitely worth your time to think about it. But yeah, in this case, like I really don't know who should do what, and I'm really trying to think about, like, it's such a beast of a project in my head because it's, you know, this, I'm essentially building a digital world for sports, and I don't know the best way to manage that yet. I just kind of have to build it and play around with it, see what works and what doesn't, get some feedback from people. It's a big reason why I'm building it open source is I need you lovely people to help me out along the way. So this is obviously like, this is again where my productivity kind of suffers. I need to call that league ID. This stuff may end up being built out into a metadata struct or something like that to clean it up later on, but I think it's good to just get it out there sometimes. Okay, so we're just gonna keep things nice and consistent while we go to. So we'll build similar tracking in, so teams will have an ID, leagues will have an ID, those IDs will be based off the totals, so it'll just increment up from 0 to infinity, hopefully not infinity because we don't have enough numbers for that. And then I think it makes sense to have a way to track, like same with like commissioners. I guess the technical term would be owners, but we'll just probably call it managers or something like that to just not confuse it with the account owner keyword in here. So essentially we're just gonna do this again. So I'm just gonna call it Nah, we're gonna call it team owners. Okay, cool. So basically the same as up there. We're doing the same thing for leagues and teams, tracking how many exist, creating a dictionary with a map of the ID to the owner. That right now is at least just going to be the way that I'm keeping control of this. So the reason I'm doing it this way is, like, I did find looking up the information to be a bit of a treat. Like I built like a blockchain or a Top Shot kind of Explorer MVP for Swish for a client a little while ago, and we were running into some walls where, like, we just couldn't. it was a bit of a challenge to kind of query things from the blockchain itself, because it's not like a typical like REST or GraphQL API. So like you do need to search a little bit more for things. So I'm thinking, like, just to have these dictionaries as a list of who owns what, at least for the commissioners or for the leagues and teams, will be helpful for not only myself but like users down the road that are trying to actually query data off the chain, especially if things are still in a pretty early state. Which is optimistic, because I don't know how long this thing's actually going to take me to build. Like I said, it's a beast, so the goal would be to getting something cool, like some sort of prototype within 6 months, but that's ambitious. Crazy. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Turn on the camera and forget how to go every time. Okay. So pretty similar, like that's what you're seeing up here. If you did follow along with any of like the Flow Playground tutorials, these are really similar to like the NFTs, kinda. Like it's similar patterns that you're gonna start seeing all over the place. So you're gonna see this whole ID passing it in here. Soon we'll end up with like borrowing references and accessing metadata off that stuff, but it does get pretty comfortable and almost somewhat repetitive, especially when you're just building like things out basic like this. But that's nice. I like comfortable. Also borrowing a comment. I actually like that comment better, but it's not really. That one's a little bit more relevant to what we're actually doing there. So like the team will have, like, I'm still trying to figure out if this team is going to be an NFT or if it's just going to be a resource. It will live in a user's account, so I guess it might as well be an NFT. But no, because like I guess it would be cool if somebody could trade a team, right? Like not just the player, like if you could actually buy and sell full teams with rosters, and whatever else they might come with. That actually gives me other ideas as far as like once we get into arenas and stuff, how do we manage that? But so like I think we'll probably just for now put yeah, we'll put like metadata. Yeah, so we're just gonna do a basic string key, string value dictionary in there for metadata right now. And then we're also gonna add roster, which will be a collection of players we're gonna call it any resource for now, but that's just because we don't have our actual NFT. So all caps, baby. Let's call it athlete. So I say that in screaming caps. It doesn't actually mean that we're going to only use those for the project, but once we have the actual NFT for our players, like for our athletes, then we're gonna make sure that we're only looking for those. Bastion, if you're here, this is kind of where I'm starting to think about, like I would love to be able to extend, say, a crypto kitty or like a I don't know if a Top Shot moment would really fit, but I think it would actually be kind of cool to be able to like add, like if that other NFT, if I was to apply an equipment bag to it, it would get extended with some functionality that might even like give it access to an interface perhaps. And then I would try to make this any resource with that interface. And the interface I'm thinking would be a way to designate that that NFT is like a player item or like a player with equipment or whatever, like some sort of way to actually to get away from, you know, what type, like who created the NFT and focus only on what the capability of the NFT is or what capabilities it has access to, because the goal here is definitely not to only be able to use my NFTs. I want anybody to be able to use their NFTs, with the only caveat that like I don't want somebody to be able to bring like, you know, I don't want someone to put a shirt in as a player. I want to be able to restrict that to like playable characters types or something like that. But hopefully you're kicking around, hopefully you got that bit, because that's really what's been on my mind for like, that's what I'm really trying to find the best way to articulate in those weekly calls we're having. So maybe we can continue that tomorrow. Anyway, thought that was a good chance to point that out. So this could really just say name and be a string, and maybe it will. You know what? I don't need to build a dictionary for something that doesn't need to necessarily be a dictionary. So that is like super basic metadata for a team. Like obviously we can have location, we can have some image stuff or logos, all sorts of stuff there. But for now, we're just going to use the team name as a string. I think it'll just make it easy for testing to kind of actually be able to build a team, give it a name, and then as we loop through those and make sure things are working properly, we can actually see a name as opposed to an ID. Just a little bit nicer for us when we're coding. So roster, resource dictionary, So yeah, that's another cool thing about Flow is resources can store other resources. So this resource is a team. The roster for the team could, right? This is just, again, roughing it out, but could actually be stored inside of this team resource. So you could actually store those NFTs in here. I don't know if that's the way that we're going to roll it out, because it might be cool to have your teams live in, you know, your own wallet and just kind of pass a capability to whatever team they're playing for, because then you could potentially play for more than one team, right? Like there are multi-sport athletes in the world. Amazing. So again, I think it would be better to have the flexibility to do something like that than to limit ourselves out of the gate. So this will probably change, basically. Again, we're just building it so that we can say we built it, and then we'll change it and make it better after. So we're going to just instantiate with no, like, empty values for now. So this, oh, it's been a while. Definitely don't want to do that, but so like when you're creating a resource that contains other resources, so this is a resource dictionary, special little sign here, special little move operator here. This is what we're using that tell us, hey, this is something different. Because they're a resource, they need to be handled a little differently. So resources are like anything that you're moving around, like any asset really, like that I would be moving around the chain. That's probably a butchered explanation, but anything that there can only be one of, like anything unique, anything that you don't want to duplicate or have lost or stolen, needs to be a resource. So because of that, they have to be handled differently. And so like I was seeing an error when I removed this. That's what this message was saying. Missing destructor for resource field roster. So basically just saying, hey, like if you're gonna have this, you gotta do something with it if this resource gets destroyed, because otherwise it's gonna be sitting out in no man's land. And you can't have, every resource has to be moved from one location to another or destroyed. It has to have a home. It has to be intentionally managed. So that's what that's all about. So yeah, each team has an ID, has a name, has a roster. So I think naturally we can start going into the kind of how to instantiate a team, how to create a team. So I think we're going to set the ID and team name when we create the team. We might as well give it an opportunity to update the again, that's probably a waste of time, but we'll code it in there anyway. It's just kind of a demo of how to build stuff. Resource dictionary that contains athlete, player, NFTs. So we're gonna need to add athlete to team. Remove athlete from team. And we should be able to get athlete IDs. Get team name. So that's pretty much the basic. Yeah, that's the basic kind of setters, getters, whatever we need for this team resource to get started with. And then we'll have, similar to like League, we'll create a new team as part of the contract, not the actual team resource. And this will be something that anyone can do. So like if you've played Foot Battle before, like you'll create a new team, it'll generate like a, well, Foot Battle will generate a roster for you that you can start with and get playing for free. So this will be something similar. Like you'll generate a team, and then once you've got that team, I'd like you to go to a draft, and you'd pick from like a central, decentralized but central pool of athletes that are the athlete NFTs minted by this contract. Another can of worms right there too, because creating like this decentralized draft of, you know, that's hopefully exponentially going to have to get larger and larger and larger to serve multiple sports is going to be a really interesting undertaking. So this will be something like right off the bat. The only person you can update the team name should be the owner of the team. So these are pretty easy little methods. Like they're just manipulating data on the resource itself. So self name equals name. There's a lot more too, like with the pub fun, like you can, those are access modifiers, so we can get really specific about who can do what with that as well. Like you saw with the admin resources and stuff, there's ways to pass resources to certain users' accounts that if a user has that resource, then they can do certain things that other users can't. So lots of different kind of opportunities to deal with access control and who can do what. So again, like as I'm building this thing out, I'm just going to keep it pretty open and easy, so that anybody can do anything, and then we'll test things out and kind of restrict them from there. So we're just going to return string. Because we're storing the actual resource, like again, this is kind of where we're just going to code it however we feel like right now and then see how that works. You know what? We're not going to do that, I think. Yeah, no, I think we're just going to store capability here, just like we were doing upstairs there. We don't need this to be a resource dictionary anymore then. So we're not storing the actual resources. And this, like in my opinion, this is actually a lot cleaner. Now we don't have to pass this thing to something else in order to use it. What this capability is, I have no idea yet. But it should be a way for this team to then do something, like call some methods on the athlete or player NFT that belongs to it. So we don't need this anymore because it doesn't contain a resource. Now we just need to pass, like we did up top, yeah, athlete ID and the capability. To the actual team. So we're gonna do, like again, this is very similar to this whole structure now, because we're just passing things in to their dictionary, updating it. So roster ID. And then these dashes here, so if you need to, like for these single argument methods, you don't actually need to, like when you're calling the method, where am I using it now? here's a good idea. So like you can see here, I'm using like this underscore space argument label. Using it here too. So when we're actually creating it, you can see that I don't actually need to write ID colon space ID. Like it's just, you can just throw the value in there. So you can use unnamed, or what's the word for it? We don't need to write those out every time. So if there's more than one, I kind of like to have the argument labels in there because it just makes it clear what you're doing. But in this case, we just need to pass the ID that we're removing. So should be pretty, I mean, I guess I could say by ID to make it more explicit what we're actually doing there, but we're not going to do that. I don't know why we're not going to do that. We're just not. Okay, changed my mind. I don't know. So here it seems fine because it's kind of built into the code and the user probably isn't ever really gonna have to do anything with it. So that works for me, but here it's just kind of like I've already I think here it just kind of makes sense to have that label in there because it just lets the user know what they're actually doing. So I went back, I fixed it. And then this will be another just quick getter that loops through our dictionary. Well, it doesn't loop through our dictionary at all, actually. It just returns the keys. So just the labels from our roster dictionary. So just the IDs. Make sure it's named properly. Okay, so now our team actually does something. It exists and it does something. So let's think about the comment side of things. Somewhere in our code T. So team. Contains a requester. It seems kind of like a duh comment, but sometimes that's just the way it should be. do for now. Okay, so this will need a way to create one. Okay, so passing it in the ID. We passing a name and create a team. Yeah, we should. Get our getters together. Getters together. Guess we're gonna need strong. Yeah, okay, we're gonna token. Just because there's two there, like even though it's on the system side, like it just seems lazy, like not to not just throw shade on anybody who decides to do it that way, but just seems easier to read if I just throw that in there. Like again, it's the team ID, but you know, now that you're expecting an ID is the team ID. Yeah. And then just for Bastion, I'm gonna make sure those comments look good. Okay. So this is probably doing a good job of explaining why I really enjoy doing like the initial setup and stuff like off stream, because it is pretty repetitive. Like I think it's gonna be, you know, a couple of weeks probably until I get to a point where things actually get pretty interesting. And that's because I'm going to be doing a lot of this. So going through, building some basic patterns out, refactoring, seeing if there's any way to, you know, abstract some of this away and create like basically cleaner, cleaner ways of doing things. But I think like once I start getting into the more critical thinking stuff, like okay, like how are we actually going to make this happen? That's where things are going to get a little bit more interesting on stream, and like hopefully I can get a few minds kind of together talking about it, because like that's been the big barrier for me to getting this project out the door, is I don't know how to articulate this very well. So I think the best way to articulate it is to write it in code and comment the heck out of it, and then, you know, say here's what I'm trying to do, right? And like for Bastion, like I apologize right off the straight up for not being more of a contributor to the actual Flow GitHub repo. But this is, I think, the step that's going to get me there, is trying to figure out like, okay, like with a project that I have, you know, that I have so much interest in, that I'm going to be able to push myself up every learning curve. Like when I do run into those walls and I've kind of exhausted like every possible outcome, then I can kind of bring it and say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I've tried. You know, and those are, I'm hoping that those are kind of going to start materializing in the form of some like pull requests or issues on the actual repo side of things. So, yeah, that's the goal. So it's going to take a little while, I think, at least a couple of weeks to get like the super basic stuff written down and test it out, and start getting into the more interesting things of like how to make some of the bigger leaps. And really, like, those are a couple of big problems that I'm trying to solve, right? Like with the being able to bring in any type of athlete to a team, and like to make sure that it's a specific type of NFT, like so to make sure that it's like a player and not a shirt or a shoe. Nothing against shirts or shoes, but they're apparel. They're not players. So I want some way to do that, and I also want some way to like extend and inject kind of like this sports stats, like the athlete part, into the NFT itself, so it can come from a completely different source, but we can give it an equipment bag, and then after it opens that equipment bag, now it's totally able to play sports, and it can, you know, run around in this Athletaverse playground as it sees fit. So that's kind of that's the stuff that I'm hoping to get, you know, a few heads together on the stream and actually have some pretty interesting discussion around, because I'd imagine this might get a little boring. I should probably talk about what these actually do. Update team name. So again, like, I don't know what that capability is going to be called, so I'm just going to call it a capability right now. Just because I love the word roster. Hockey guy in me, man. allowed to participate in team activities. Calling it players athlete. I'm trying to keep uppercases for like resources and structs types that I've created in the code just to make it clear that I'm talking about. That time, stream's ending soon, I can't type. Okay. Things are commented. It's one of the things, like, so that's like in that other equity file. Part of the problem is that I just kind of burned ahead without writing any comments, and then you get down to like line 100 and start getting really lazy. So I'm pretty sure I was exhausted by the time I finished that page code for no good reason, because it's really not that it's not that difficult at all. But it's just, I think this was probably like my first time writing cadence code in quite a while, so I was lazy by the end of that one, and I think that's gonna just hang out there in the darkness for a little while until I really figure out what that equipment's gonna do, which really hinges on like how I manage the sports, how I manage the type of sports. That makes more sense. I think it makes more sense, right? Because I mean, if there are no leagues, there are no commissioners. What are you, the commissioner of nothing? So that works. Cool. So I've got leagues, I've got teams. I'm ready to build a like super janky test of just creating a new league and creating a new team and adding the team to the new league. So that's nice. Maybe we'll do that. I don't really want to mess around with my Flow CLI install, so we're just going to use, I think, 9.1. Cool. 9.1 OG. It's been a minute. I don't need a comment there. Spacing that out to look good. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna take a quick breather. Be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll look at just deploying this contract quickly. We'll see if it deploys. We'll probably like at least write like a quick transaction or two to like actually create a league, create a team, and then register the team to the league. Test that out, see if it works, see if we can get see if we can get just a list of team IDs. Obviously we're not going to have any roster or anything like that, but we don't need it, not for this stage. I think that would be a cool little super chill, super lightweight milestone, but a milestone nonetheless for an impromptu stream. So I will be back and we will test this baby out. Okay, I missed you. Did you miss me? Oh, good stuff. Sit down. Shades are happening. It's good. It's a good time. Let me just have a quick look at the old market. Oh, trailing stop initiated. Good times. Maybe one day I will chime into the trading side of things on the stream, but we're not going to go there. There will be no financial advice on this stream. Okay, so next step would be, I mean, we could test if it deploys. I'm already going to be super cocky and say that it does because I don't see any issues here. So we would need to write a transaction for creating a new league. And then a transaction for creating a new team. And I mean, we could do it all in one, but I'm going to do a third transaction for actually registering a team to a league. And then we'll write a script that gets the athlete, or that gets the team. Maybe we'll get the team names. Well, we'll test the team IDs. We'll build team names into it next time because I'm kind of running low on time. So that's a little bit of work to do here. So let's not be overly ambitious. Bastin, if you're kicking around, do you guys usually... I guess I can check your repo. I don't need to bug you for this one. Yeah, you split it up like this. Okay. Cool. So I think we'll just stay organized. Damn it. So one transaction for creating the league. So this is where things are going to get like kind of build specific. So for what we're doing, let me just replace my brain again quickly. So for the tooling that I'm using, one second here. Sorry, I had to save you from a gnarly burp. I just took a massive swig of Sprite. So in here, what we're doing is we're setting our account names. So we have like a future version of the tooling that is supposed to work with like the newer versions of Cadence. This is a bit old, and the newer version of our tooling will be a little bit nicer to set up. Not that different from this, but what I'm doing is I'm setting our account names to the same name as the contracts that they deploy. So for this version, it's going to be one contract per account. For future versions, once the feature's kind of successfully been rolled out, I think it exists for the Flow CLI. I can't remember which specific version, but the newer versions of Cadence that you can get through the emulator should support multiple contracts per account, but our tooling doesn't, I'm pretty sure. So it's something that it's actually championed by another developer friend of mine, and he's been super pinned down with his day job lately, so we're hoping to get that working with the new version sooner than later. But anyways, totally kind of gammered on about something unimportant, but what I'm doing here is I'm just renaming these accounts. So I'm going to make sure the first one is our Athletaverse contract. Name the same casing and everything. That's just because our Go script that runs this tooling is looking for this kind of naming convention. I don't even know if that's part of the new build, so I'll follow up when we get there, and once I get that successfully deployed, I have to test that out with this code. And I definitely wanted to write code on the project itself instead of mess with the tooling all day. I woke up motivated. So anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do here, just change those names around. Unused, that's just a temporary name. I feel like we're going to have at least, a few, probably at least these two, plus another one for gear, or for the athletes. So we're probably going to have about 4 or 5 contracts to deploy on the local development environment. So we'll probably use a few of these accounts. For now, just need one. We're going to make sure it's the first one. So this is also in order. If you were to use the VS Code extension and create new accounts, we're using the private key from the VS Code extension So if you're wondering why I'm just happily hanging out with my private keys on the screen, these are everybody's private keys from the default VS Code extension emulator config. So this just makes it really nice and easy. If you're gonna start like our tooling, you can start the, well, I'll show you in a sec, but when I start the emulator, because we're using the private keys that VS Code recognizes and everything like that, all the syntax highlighting works nicely once we've deployed our contracts, which becomes a bigger deal when you're working with stuff like this. So if you're importing a contract and trying to access namespaces, you'll get these like error messages saying, hey, this doesn't exist. Well, it does as soon as you deploy everything, and it can recognize it at those addresses. So this is what it's doing. It's just looking for a contract living at an address. We're defining that stuff up here and making sure that it goes to the right place so that we can find it as we move on through the project. So that was step one. Step two, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to rename these things. So this is now going to be Athletaverse. So I'm storing the string here. The string is really what's important. It's going to use that contract, or it's going to use that first account to deploy the contract. This is really how we're telling it to go look for this contract, by using this string here. Going to delete one of those. Okay, so that's good. I'm just gonna click somewhere else because this thing's freaking out on me, but it did save. Good. I'm not gonna write this yet. Like, I'll show you what I'm talking about with the tooling, because it's pretty quick to show you. Emulator start verbose. So we started our emulator. I guess you're not really gonna be able to see it anyway because there's no error highlighting on here. But so we just created like a really simple Go script. We run make with the emulator started, and we'll just get prompted to run through. So our contract deploys. Yay! No error messages, no panics. That's a good sign. And that is the tooling that we're going to use to just test out like our transactions. So what's nice about that is like, again, if you've seen any of the other streams, it can get a little cumbersome once you have a few contracts and transactions and scripts to test out if you're just using the VS Code extension, because you end up having to click through various things in the right order and make sure you're clicking the right buttons. And if you get like 12 steps into a 16-step process and screw up, then you have to go all the way back to the start. So we thought right off the bat, like as we started to build some larger projects, it might be helpful to be able to script that whole testing story. And that's essentially how we came up with writing some Go tooling to do that. So again, very primitive version. The new stuff is really nice. It's really slick. Bjarte's put a lot of time into learning kind of the ins and outs of Go, and doing some cool stuff with like chained methods and everything like that. So it's really nice. This is a good little starting point for that. So yeah, back to this. Just quick comment. So this transaction creates a new league and stores it. In the colors account. And I'll even go and keep things right in line with the team's comment style. So this stuff is really important. Like why Baston shouted it out is like as you build for the blockchain, especially like a blockchain like Flow, one of the big pillars of this community is composability, and building your projects in a way that other developers can either learn from or even collaborate with and build on top of. So the best way to do that is to be super explicit about what you're trying to do. So even like you know, commenting I think is really important. Everybody has their own take on whether, you know, how much commenting is good commenting. Some people prefer not to do it at all, and you know, swear by the fact that the code should document itself. um, I totally see the point in taking a little bit of extra time to comment things out yourself, as well as vetting your code and making sure that your code is nice and explicit. So, you know, going back to things like naming your variables and stuff, um, you know, I don't need to say remove athlete from team. I could say remove athlete, add athlete, and all that stuff. But it doesn't really hurt to type a little bit of extra stuff. Most editors involved like or have auto completion anyway. So I mean, just to have a little bit more detail in like your method names, your variable names, and just really considering the fact that somebody reading or using your code, even yourself reading or using your code in 3 to 6 months time may not be able to like, it may not be that legible for them. And so just taking the extra time to make it a little bit more clear is a big deal. And especially when, you know, when you're writing in this space, your code should be meant, like, the idea would be to write it, you know, in the open, test in the open, get feedback, collaborate with people. Like, it's really in line with the ethos of the industry to actually make sure that your code is well commented and accessible to everyone. So, for starters, when we're writing this transaction, I don't know why I'm going there, but when we're writing this transaction, we need to import the contract that we're trying to interact with from the address it's been deployed to. So now we get into red squiggly territory. This is where you'll see, like, once the next time when we run through the tooling, that'll all go away, because as soon as we deploy the Athletaverse contract, this will be able to see that there, and that inability to resolve will no longer be an issue. So we're importing the Athletaverse contract, and then I honestly have to remember how to write a transaction. I think it's like that. I think it's like that. Nope. Okay, going into the Dapper world. Okay. Yeah, okay, it's the prepare block that I was trying to getting confused there. Off account. So transactions have a prepare and an execute block. I think we're just gonna need to use the prepare block here. Let me just refresh my memory again though. It's almost embarrassing how long it's been, but I need to create the new league, and then I need to store it in account storage, and then I need to create a public capability for the league and link it in public storage. I don't know which way I want to go. Force unwrap. I don't know if that'll work. Basically, what we're gonna do is execute this method if it has it, or call this method if it exists on this contract. Or yeah, I'm not really trying to get rid of the error message because I know that exists. Error message is gonna show up until I deploy, so that's all good. I'm just gonna go without. Like, I feel like we need something like this here, but problem with that is, like, what do we do if the new league or that method doesn't exist? Because I wrote this, it should exist. I feel like I'm probably gonna run into some sort of error, but it's been a while, so let's just so let's just see. Man, I need to feel like guilty, but I need to read up on this and actually look for an example. Feels so simple, but it's been so long. So let's create a new league. Oh yeah, well, for starters, cool. Okay. This is a resource for starters, so it needs a move. And then we're gonna save that to storage. Yeah, okay. Okay, so again, like, what if a user has more than one league? I don't know if that, like, leagues are sport specific. So if I want to have a league per sport, or if I want to have a collection of leagues, then that's going to become an issue. I should probably have a, yeah, I should probably create like a league collection so that a user can create more than one league. Well, like, I guess, sorry, that was poorly articulated, but I'm looking at this because I'm creating a new league and then saving that new league directly to storage. If I try to do this again, I'm going to either overwrite, I believe I'm going to overwrite, or I'm going to just not be able to complete my transaction because something already exists at this path. So I think smart person would do, yeah, a smart person would create like a collection of leagues. So again, because, you know, this is going to turn into a two hour and something long stream, like, we're going to keep it short, but I should be better. Oh man, type it. It's not an interface. It is, okay. Syntax leads. Like that. It's okay. So it's just freaking out at me because I don't have the contract deployed yet. I don't know if that was articulated correctly. Okay, so in our transaction, in our prepare block, our signer, we're going to create a new league. So using the Athletaverse contract, call the create new league method, return a new league resource. In our signers account, we're going to save a new league to Athletaverse league in account storage, and then we're going to link public capability to this league. So from here, create a public capability in public storage, and this is what people will be able to use to interact with our league. Cool beans. Lots of syntax highlighting there, or lots of errors, squigglies from hell, but I think we're all right. So create team. This will be very much the same. So in order to save time, copy pasta. So our team is going to have name when we create it. The huge bits. This will be new team. I think we got it all. Nice. Oops, I'm gonna pop that in our team directory as well. Okay, and then we just need to register a team using our league. Yeah. Just off the bat, I'm thinking about it, and it's like, probably gonna have to change the way that register team is set up. Because right now you could like arbitrarily just register any team to any league. But oh well, we'll figure that out. And it needs a capability to register too. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll just give it the public capability then. See? It's an adventure. That's going to be on the... I'm just trying to think who does this. Yeah, I'll do it like as the... as the team owner. We're so close, so we'll just get it done. Okay, so like I think I'm just gonna do this all from the single account just for this first test. So like the same account that deploys this Athletaverse contract is also going to create a league and a team and register the team to the league. So that should work. I need to get the team's capability, then I need to create a reference to the team, then I need to create a call to register method, pass in the team's ID and the team's capability. Cool. This is usually where I get lazy, start saying team cap, team ref, and all that stuff. Just for the sake of what we're doing right now, I think it's just nice if I write it all out. I don't want to load, I want to borrow. Reference to the Athletaverse team. This probably will have an interface on it, so I probably would have something different in here, like squigglies with something. Curly braces with something in there, but for now we're just gonna do it this way. And then borrow that from the public. Hopefully I don't. So again, like I've stored individual teams in account storage. No. I'll have team collections and league collections, and that way we can have multiple teams and multiple leagues, and somebody can own more than one of each thing. That just solves a huge storage nightmare right off the bat. Oh wait, yeah, shoot. Team capabilities. So instead of taking it from the private storage, actually, yeah, no, I should just take it. No, I can't do that because I'm trying to pass in the public capability. So that's cool. So what I'm saying, sorry, as I'm thinking out loud is, normally because I'm accessing something that exists in my storage, I'd be able to just use the load method and pull it right out of that storage path. But because I'm actually going to be passing this capability in when I register the team, I'm just getting the public capability. And the reason for that is like, all I really need, like the only reason I'm doing this way is because I'm just actually borrowing it to get the team's ID and then pass it all into the method itself. So I think I don't meant to do that because I've already that makes more sense to me, that error, because I haven't deployed yet, so that's cool. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'd be able to actually get into the storage and load the raw data, or the like the actual a reference to the object itself, the resource itself. I think I should double check that. I think that's the syntax for it. Oh yeah, I guess I can just borrow from storage directly too, can't I? Borrow a reference, yeah. Okay. So I had a little panic there just in case we couldn't get it. This shouldn't be lead capability, this should be something to reference. Yeah, lead reference. Should we call that if it has it on it? And then let's go back here. So when we're calling it, we need to pass the ID and the capability. I don't really know the ID yet, so I'm just gonna fudge it. So did I put a getter for the ID for the team? I did not. The team name. Get ID. Capability, team ID. Okay, so that should be pretty legit. Okay, so I'm sure I don't need to go through it, but in our transaction block, in our transaction and our prepare block, we're getting the public capability for the team from storage. So we're calling get capability. I mean, we really don't need to do it this way. This is the same way we would do it if we were talking to an external, like talking to someone's account that we don't actually own. So if we were trying to get a public capability from any account, but because we necessarily wouldn't own this, I just kind of built it out this way. So we're getting the public capability. We need to pass the public capability in here anyway. From the public capability, we're borrowing a reference to the actual resource. Via our reference, we are calling getID if the method exists. And then via the reference that we borrowed for the league, so this is kind of like a quick way we did it, but we're borrowing a reference directly from storage, panicking if we don't get anything there, and then calling register team on the league reference and adding our team. So if all goes well, we should be able to write a quick script and see our team stored in our teams dictionary for our league. Thinking about it, I probably could have totally done this in the flow playground too, but it's gonna get big. So sorry, bear with me because I'm just falling asleep here now, but yeah. So we just need to, via a script, check that, like get the team from the account storage, and then run the get team IDs method. So pretty simple. Just make another folder. Oh well. I guess we'll have to pass in the league ID. I don't know if that works either. Come to think of it. I don't know, just because it's... I have to think this one through, but like right at the finish line, so let's just get her done. Are we gonna pass anything in? No, not for this one, because it's too complicated for my brain at this stage. No, it's not. Can we do it with our tooling is the question. I think we can. I don't know. I'll do that next time. We're just gonna do a hard-coded script quickly just to double check. we need to type that? Yeah, we do, don't we? I think that's correct. I can't remember. Maybe not. Okay. We try this then. Yeah, no, because when we borrow it, yeah, okay. Right here. God. Oh. Okay. Getting there. Okay. Okay, I might be in trouble when trying to input or deploy these, but we'll see how she goes. Just trying to remember how to actually use this script. Okay. So we got some issues there, but at the same time, like I haven't been able to deploy yet. Well, I haven't deployed yet, so we'll see what we actually run into when we execute, and then we'll fix it from there. So that's the mod file. We don't need that. Okay, so what's going on here, these scan lines are just basically printing a line of text, waiting for us to hit enter. When we hit enter, then it goes ahead and starts executing the deploy code. Prints another happy message. We're gonna do send transaction. There's no arguments. One signer. So that's my signer. And then we're gonna pass in a string, which is gonna be the path of our transaction. So should be transact or what do we do there? Yeah, okay. So it should be league, create league. If that goes well, we're gonna have team, create team. And these like in the wild would actually be signed by separate like different users and stuff like that. But this, because everything's, like I said, being deployed to one contract or being deployed to one account and signed by one user, we're just gonna do this all quick style. Create team and then register team. Oh yeah, and our script should probably do something like. Probably just log it out to the console, so the emulator console. What am I doing? Team IDs? It's probably get team IDs, right? Yeah, team IDs. Ooh, ugly. Capital I, capital D, S. Okay, so it finds everything. It's just gonna log those IDs. Back to my trusty, nice. Trusty docs. Cool. I feel like it's just gonna go crazy and write what we feel like writing, cause hey, it's not like it's gonna break anything. So basically that's a start to finish script. I don't know what's going on with my Go. Ugh. It's like every time I save that Go file, it's like creating some sort of weird loop where I have to back out of the file and come back in to check to make sure it was saved. That's all good. So I'm almost positive when we run this right now, we're gonna run into some issues because there was something sticking out on one of these transactions that didn't seem quite right. Mismatched types, expected storable got invalid. So I don't know, I might just be doing something wrong there. Fair enough. I don't normally code without reading first, so let's see what happens. So fire up the emulator. I would probably move you know what I'm gonna fire up the emulator in the so I'll set it up in flow, and that way we can just watch the actually let me just stop it and restart it a couple of times. Make sure we get it working. Creating the default accounts. Could just be because I'm using the super dated version, but well, not super dated, but it also could be because I didn't properly stop it. wonder if I can still get it working with this script. I don't need the extensions. The reason I want the emulator running down here is it's going to log out the response from that script once it runs. So I'm just trying to kill that weird glitch with Go. Let's try it again. See it too. Missing argument label team name. Where? Oh. So used to Control C and then restarting with the terminal that it feels strange to use the UI now. Oh, so it needs to get the ID. Needs to have capability. And it needs to update the argument label. So I'm just getting the error messages back off of the script, or back off of the transaction. So it's in here. This needs to have an ID. I guess we should just say here, this has to have one, this has to have that, and this has to have the proper label. And we don't need optional chaining there, so basically if that was an optional value, then we would need to check to see if that value exists, but that value is not optional, so we don't need that. So that's just pretty much what I was wondering earlier, like, hey, do I need this or not? Probably import the contract. Coding with Eric. Cool. All our errors are gone now. That's a happy feeling, and that's good because now what I was saying there, like with the actual contracts deployed, you can see syntax highlighting is actually helpful, and that is integrated. So like even if we didn't have the emulator running in the console here and we had it running through our separate terminal window, we would still get that, which is really nice when you're coding, because one of my favorite things about this language is the fact that it is very in your face about when things are or aren't going to work. So I found that like more often than not, if I don't see any errors in my code will deploy, which is a nice feeling when you spend hours trying to make something work. It's great when it actually works. Who would have thunk it? Cool, so that's returning an empty array, which is fine because I haven't actually completed a successful run of this script yet, but we are about to right now. Okay, so once we press enter, everything should happily just work. Look at that beautiful thing. Okay, so what's going on here is the contract successfully deployed. I don't know what the hell I'm returning right here. That's supposed to be an array of IDs from the team. That looks like a byte array, but okay. But yeah, so my 3 transactions are being successfully applied. That's great. We're getting our setup completed message, which is great. So that tells us we're getting there. Then we're running our script and we're logging whatever the heck this is. We're seeing down here, that's what, okay, cool. Sorry, just this is some output from our script itself. But this is, where is this coming from actually? Oh yeah, okay, cool. So that's the Go, yeah, that's our Go tooling outputting that. And then the actual flow, like CLI, like emulator output is down here. So this is what I expected to see, was an array with 0 in it, which is actually the ID of the team that was registered. So if we were to create a second team, yeah, we're not going to do that because I can't start more than 1 team right now. I was thinking about just doing it for demo, but that's where we needed an actual collection of teams as well as leagues, so that a user can store more than 1 in their account. But hey, that's not bad. We actually had a successful demo. It was done in 2 hours of work. Nothing blew up on us, which was great. So you know what? I will count that as a bit of a success. So that'll pretty much wrap things up for today. I think like it was really basic stuff. Again, like we just created like the basic smart contract structure for our leagues and our teams. Made sure that we could create some pretty rudimentary resources and connect them. But just even off that little test, I'm starting to think about elements of jank in that setup and how we can fix it. So I'll probably hack away on this as much as I can for the next few days, and we'll follow up with another live stream as soon as there's something of note to show you. Until then, we'll probably do something a little bit fun with some games. I know one of my developer friends wanted to have at least a co-stream session, so we might find something to work on just on a live stream that way. If anybody on the Flow team wants to kind of pitch in on this project and spitball with me or give me some brainstorming tips, like we can definitely do something there too. So tons of fun stuff we can do. Yeah, so until the next time, have a good one, and I look forward to catching up with you then. Take care, everyone. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend if you're in the US. Stay safe.